Chapter 2.5 A Lead. "What makes it glow?" Zoto asked, noticing the baton's light radiate as he and Retta walked. "I don't really know," she said, crossing her arms over to cover it. Maybe our sage knows." Zoto led Retta to the distant edge of the town square. The trees' branches and leaves formed an impenetrable city boundary. The last building at the edge was a temple, carved from the trees, sculpted into a colossal human face. The wood was old, thick, darkened, and moldy. Moss infested its edges. Vines snaked along the wood's grain. The face's mouth was agape, too calm for a scream, too foreboding to give it any other name. The mouth was the entrance. Zoto led Retta inside, where the shadows swallowed the light. It was a dark, long hall, lit only by the dim flickers of wood pyres dotted along the walls. The shadows danced with the fire, playing tricks on Retta's mind, making her feel like someone was watching, waiting, stalking. She traced the shadows, waiting for movement, until in the distance she saw the silhouette of an older woman. She sat with her back to them, her shadow outlined by a ring of fire. It danced with the flickering of flame and beckoned Zoto and Retta closer. The sage had long, braided silver hair, her skin as dry and gaunt as the wood of the temple. Her white robes were trimmed with gold, similar to Zoto's. She sat cross-legged in front of a fire, watching a sand pendulum swing in perfect balance. Without turning back, the sage presented an open palm, gesturing to two empty pillow seats across the fire from her. Zoto nodded, and Retta followed his lead as they both sat, crossed their legs, and looked across the flames to the sage. Retta felt warmth, not from the fire in front of her, but from the baton, glowing in her inner pocket. "Zoto," the sage said, her voice the sound of an ancient unearthed tomb coming to life. "And Miss Starlight." The sage identified Retta as simply as noting the weather. There was no emotion, no surprise, no excitement or questions. The sage was simply stating a fact of the universe, a fact she somehow knew from across the void of space. "How do you know me?" "You look just like your mother," she said, and Retta's heart sank. "My name is Vickery." "How do you know my mom?" Retta felt threatened by her mysterious air. "She made her way across the stars, and this was but one of her stops. The better question is, what brings you here?" Retta felt a warmth coming from her jacket, and knew it was the baton. As she reached in, she saw its faint, bluish-green glow emanate from her pocket. She drew the baton out with its glow bright amidst the dark of the temple. Its light reflected off Zoto and Vickery's pale skin, cast long shadows across their faces, and stirred something deep within Vickery. Her rigid composure splintered. She squinted, narrowing the dry, bark-like skin around her eyes. Retta thought she was immovable, incapable of emotion on first impression, but revealing the baton proved that assumption wrong. The sage soon realized her old eyes did not betray her. What she saw was real. Her eyes widened, and she gasped. She jolted, so sudden her pendulum swung out of alignment. It knocked over a standing column the pendulum was meant to miss. The piece fell and rattled against the ground, echoing through the empty halls of the temple. Then there was silence, disturbed silence. The only sound was the crackling of the fire. It was an eeriness Retta had not expected. Was showing them the baton a mistake? "Why do you have this?" Vickery said, deathly serious. Retta was too deep to back out now. My mom sent me this. And what did she say? She didn't say anything. Retta watched Vickery and saw that was not the answer Vickery wanted. It came in an unmarked box. Vickery took a moment to absorb the information, breathing deep and then exhaling. She picked up the fallen piece and nestled it between her hands as she put them together in prayer. She rested her forehead against her fingers and whispered an invocation before tossing the piece into the fire. It burned, and the scent of sage rose from the ashes into the air. A piece is out of alignment, and this is a bad omen. For your mother to pass the baton means something bad, Retta thought. Something bad has happened to my mom, but you don't want to say that in front of me. Retta sat upright now, locked into this conversation. This was her first lead. Something has happened to Celeste. Vickery politely finished. What do you think happened? I do not know, but there are enough evil people desperate to have the baton for themselves. Why? Do you not know the powers of the baton? Retta looked to Zodo and then back to the sage, feeling ignorant to a fact they seemed obviously privy to. She was embarrassed, but had to be honest. No, I don't. Vickery reached out and held Retta's hand in hers. Vickery felt frail and dry, but she held Retta firmly to stress the importance of what she was about to say. The baton is a conduit, a connector, Retta. It connects us through what makes us human. Our memories, our emotions, our thoughts, our minds, and our bodies. Okay? Retta didn't understand what she meant. The deeper your connection with others, the stronger the baton becomes. A small radiance of light came from the baton as Vickery spoke, piquing Retta's curiosity even if she didn't understand. Stronger how? The baton lets you see what people see, hear what they hear, read their thoughts, and even enter their minds. Is this some long-forgotten tech? No, Miss Starlight. This is no tech. This taps into our nature and into what makes us human. Retta had a hard time believing what Vickery said. The sage had no reason to lie to her, but it seemed overly fantastical and grandiose, as if the sage was dodging the real question of where Retta's mom was. In the wrong hands. This baton. She paused, seeing Retta's skeptical expression. Vickery chose her next words carefully. This baton can be very powerful in the wrong hands. If this baton is so important, then why did I never see my mom with it? Never. No, never. Did your mom have any tattoos? Retta wasn't sure how the question was relevant. Yeah, she did. She had a sleeve of them and kept adding to it. Why? Vickery mulled it over for a moment. And you still hold it. Interesting. What does that mean? Vickery was silent, with her eyes closed, thinking for a moment. But Retta's patience was at its limits. What do you mean? It means you are not ready. Vickery looked away. Wait, Retta said and reeled in her frustration. No, please, I am ready. You are not, Vickery said and shot her down. You're the first lead I've had since I left Earth. And I won't be the last, Vickery said. The light of the baton reflected off her eyes. The baton's glow will guide you to the people you seek, even if they are not who you expect them to be. Go on. I cannot, until you are ready. Vickery could tell Retta's patience ran thin. I need this. Retta's tone grew firmer. I left Earth. I left everything I had for this. I am ready. You are not, and I will not help you until you and the Baton are one." "What does that even mean?" Retta said and touched Vickery's hand. Retta felt a warmth, a strong, pulsing warmth, beating at her chest and radiating fire through her heart. The Baton. It glowed brighter and brighter until its light was so blinding Retta shielded her eyes. It stopped, and when Retta looked up, the sage was frozen in time. But not the present time. The Vickery in front of her was not the withering, wrinkled woman Retta knew, but a younger, youthful Vickery, whose silken black hair was tied into tight braids. Her skin was smooth, her eyes were bright, and this younger Vickery was seated next to Retta's mom, Celeste. A younger Celeste. Retta twisted around, looking for Zodo, and saw no sight of him. The torches that burned along the temple's halls had gone dark. The scene was surrounded in infinite darkness, as if Retta was watching two actors on a stage frozen in the past. Celeste sat across from Vickery, the same way Retta did all these years later. Celeste had her iconic red scarf, laced in gold and wrapped around her neck. Her curly black hair parted to one side, and she glowed with the same blue-green light as Retta's baton. Except it was not a baton that glowed. It was her tattoos. They pulsed and were the only sign of life in this frozen, old memory. Retta blinked, and as if awoken from a dream, snapped back to reality. The snapshot of the past was gone. Vickery was in front of her. Her wrinkles returned, and her hair faded to gray, and Retta's hand gripped Vickery's. "Please, teach me. I'm listening." "Let go of me," Vickery said, and snapped her hand out of Retta's grip. "And leave." Her disappointment was cutting. Her warm voice was gone. Her tranquility was now tense and stern, and she wondered why Celeste entrusted Retta to be the Baton's next heir. Retta wanted to fight back. She wanted to force this old sage to explain what this baton was, who made it, where it came from, what it could do. But that door was closed now. "Excuse me. I must speak with Zodo, in private," Vickery said, not even acknowledging Retta anymore as Miss Starlight. Retta looked at Zodo, and he silently mouthed, "We will talk after." He nodded for her to wait at the entrance. She submitted, resigned herself to the entrance, and waited by the door, trying to listen in to their conversation. It was just out of earshot, and all she heard were mumbles. "Ready for tomorrow?" "Yes." "Ceremony when the lights wail?" "Yes." "You know what to do?" "Yes." "You are smart?" "Yes." "Yes." Zodo bowed and walked back to Retta, stopping at the mouth of the temple and turning back again. "Please, play nice for me." He smiled and asked Retta to bow with him. With the fakest smile she could manage, she sneered and bowed at the woman who claimed Retta wasn't ready. "Convincing enough?" she asked. Zodo smiled and nodded. "Yes, let us go." They turned around, and when they did, Retta saw the first person here who wasn't as pale as white porcelain. He had tan skin, with intricate tribal tattoos that ran the length of his wrist up to his shoulder, around his bulging neck, and behind his chubby cheeks up to his scalp. Zodo immediately recognized him. "Oh, hello, Jimbo." "Hey, Zodo," Jimbo said, then looked at Retta with a smile. "Who is this?"